Thank you, Madam Mayor and City Council members. As we've talked about over the last several months, we've engaged in a farmers market strategic plan for our 35-year-old Moscow Farmers Market. This is a plan that became a project priority, considering that the market has reached its 35th anniversary, and hasn't been the subject of any formal long-term planning during that time. And during that time as well has grown significantly. Our project began last October and was the result of a grant we received, a Rural Business Enterprise Grant. And with the many changes we saw in the 2012 season, we didn't start that project until October. Our consultant was Aaron Zaretsky from Public Market Development. Aaron's visited and worked with many markets over the years and is a farmer himself. He came to visit us on the last market of the season on October 27th. During that weekend, we had a variety of public meetings to work with all of our stakeholders. That included our vendors, businesses, and the public as well. From that time, we developed questionnaires to gather further public input. That was reviewed at January 10th's public meeting. We again met with the vendors of the Farmers Market Advisory Board as representatives for those vendors. And from there, the draft plan was developed and proposed at a city council workshop for consideration. And during this entire time, we've had about 6 months to work on this project. And we've done, we think, a very good job of involving all stakeholders along the way and gathering a considerable amount of public input from those who could be at meetings, to those who were not able to make meetings. And the plan has been fairly well informed through that. However, it has a lot of really long-term, big vision types of ideas that, when considering the process we'd need to undergo to vet those ideas and to get them implemented for the 2013 season, is very overwhelming at this point. And as staff has received a lot of the comments and heard the feedback, we'd just like to slow that process down a bit. Excuse me. We'd like to allow for a more thorough review of that plan to really make sure those ideas are run through the different stakeholder groups and to make sure that we get the proper input to either make those a reality or adjust them as needed and prepare for the future in that way. What we'd like to propose in the interim is, instead of adopting the proposed draft plan, is look at some of the big items that have come forward since 2012, especially considering the move of the market from Jackson Street to Main Street. Looking at, like I said, 3 topics. The first is strengthening and defining the overall structure of the market, the market governance. We've had several groups, especially as the market has grown, starting with the Moscow Arts Commission. The Farmers Market Advisory Board has joined them as well as to assist the Arts Commission in making farmers markets decisions and reviewing items. And as the market's grown, so has the agenda of the Moscow Arts Commission as well, with public art projects, art walk, and those types of things. To provide, kind of a structure and a clarification for the farmers market, one of the ideas that's been proposed is a farmers market commission to formalize a group to look at the farmers market as a whole and allow the Moscow Arts Commission to focus more on the arts as well. One of the other items that came up was market layout adjustments. We have an opportunity this summer with the construction work that will be happening on 3rd Street to make any adjustments that may need to happen for the market during that time. So that does become more of a priority and less of a 5-year plan. We'd like to look at some of the possibilities now that we've been in the space. We've seen how that can work with the market in place. Emergency responders have had an opportunity to look at how that layout works for them as well. And then again, with that construction process that's coming up upon us, take a look at what adjustments could be made or should be made to further accommodate the market and the public event that the market is. And then finally, marketing. The market was an item that was very well voiced through this process. In the move from Jackson Street to Main Street, it was recognized that traffic going along our major highways no longer had a direct line of sight to the market, seeing the hustle and bustle that was going on there. Some of the things that were proposed were to talk with our Idaho Transportation Department about banners over roadways and things like that. We feel there's some things that could be done on a smaller scale in the interim to prepare for just several weeks away when our market begins in earnest, to kind of bring that traffic back around and highlight the fact that the market is still on Main Street and still downtown. With that, those 3 items were the things we'd like to plan for in the interim, all the while providing an extended process to look at this draft strategic plan to implement that perhaps in 14 as we move forward.
Okay. Kathleen, do you have anything to add?
Good job. Not much, other than it is a 5-year plan, so it might take some time to vet it out, and good job. But as Jen brought up, the 3 things that are highlighted are just the organization as far as the management of the market, and forming a separate commission possibly, and then looking at the layout on Main Street. We did our best with what we had last summer, but that can always be improved, and Mr. Zaretsky had made some recommendations in his plan on some changes, and so we might want to look at what's possible and what we could accomplish this summer, and then marketing the market, different ways to market the market. So I see those 3 things as doable with this season.
Okay. Thank you. Council members have questions, comments? Yes, Walter.
Thank you, ma'am. For either one of you, do you plan to implement any of the Zaretsky recommendations before you come back to us, having worked your way through it? I mean, are any of those going to be implemented this summer?
I had one thought on that. Marketing the market, a lot of the ideas that our consultant came up with, such as media campaigns, rack cards, and things like that, are, in my opinion, very manageable, and some of the things that we're already doing that we maybe just need to expand on. We have a great opportunity to get some of those things going in 2013. Some of the layout adjustments with policies coming forward may be more difficult, but considering the construction, may be necessary to look at this season. Defining the oversight of the market, we took the idea of the nonprofit authority that our consultant proposed, and looking at the fact that it would take time to set that organization up. He actually referred to the 1912 Center Heart of the Arts as an opportunity for an example of how that could work. Taking into consideration the market's actually in public right-of-way changes that a little bit. So it would take some further review, but taking a model like that is where this commission structure has kind of come as an idea that may be good to work with in the interim, to provide that oversight and that clarification of the management of the market, but something we can do manageably in the short term with an example that we've used several dozen times currently. So,
okay, please.
Just a side comment, the Heart of the Arts operates the 1912 building, which is a publicly owned building, so I'm not sure I fully understand and don't want to go into it tonight, the public right-of-way problem. My first thought was what was being requested tonight was for us to approve something of a holding pattern to give staff, I presume, with other input, an opportunity to work through the 5-year plan put forward by Mr. Zaretsky, and then bring it back to council with, here is his plan, and here's a striking score that staff, along with outside input, public input, vendors, Main Street businesses, customers, on and on, have suggested that we're recommending adoption with these changes. Is that more than what you're talking about doing? I guess I'm a little confused about what's being requested of us. I mean, an interim plan is slightly different from what I just described, I think. So,
right. I think it's a combination
help me here a little bit
of those 2 things. Thank you. Doing exactly what you said is the idea behind the holding pattern, but basically looking at giving us this market season and perhaps into next winter to look at that and properly vet it. But in the meantime, there are some real needs that we've seen that have come forth from the strategic planning process and our 35 years of experience with the market, and that includes oversight of the market. For instance, if a commission were adopted, that would be a good group to actually vet the plan and go through these items piece by piece, looking at making sure all the stakeholders are involved along the way. That could possibly be a benefit to the plan. But considering the volumes of input we've received, I think it's important to take it slowly and make sure that each idea is considered and work through the plan in a thoughtful way, and do it in more than just a few weeks.
If I could, 2 more things, and I'll turn it loose and let other people have their time. Kathleen and I talked about banners over Washington and Jackson last year. directing people to Main Street. Is that one item of his recommendations that will be implemented this year?
Well, he's recommended that we start a dialogue with ITD on how to do that.
Which you did last summer.
Well, we've called folks, but I haven't put anything in place with ITD. I think that's something where I work with Streets Department and we call the right people. But I don't have a point of contact for that.
If I may, Gary, can you weigh in on that? I mean,
Yeah,
it
strikes
me as, a perfectly wonderful idea, especially since I thought of it before he did.
What height are you proposing, Walter, given the height of those rigs going up and down
We
the street?
we hang banners across those streets all the time.
Yeah,
Yeah, if I may.
please.
That dialogue can be taken up with ITD at any time. They've been open to different issues, wrapping utility boxes, crosswalks, things like that. We've got a good working relationship with them, so we certainly can do something like that. If I can weigh in a little bit on this interim comment as well. Mr. Zaretsky's plan was obviously pretty far-reaching. It ranged from 2% surtaxes on top of reconfiguring Friendship Square, so on and so forth. Obviously, a lot of issues that were pretty far-reaching, and it didn't seem like either the public or the council was ready just to adopt that plan. And as we knew, it was a plan that was put together in a fairly short period of time, wasn't well funded. A lot of great ideas, but how they will play in Moscow and play into the farmers market, it remains to be seen. As Jen and Kathleen have indicated, we've met as staff to try and work through what can be done to improve the market, let it proceed in its very successful manner, and take care of some of the most burning issues that people said they wanted to deal with. And one of those was the Arts Commission and the Farmers Market Advisory Committee not knowing exactly who's in charge, how does it happen, who has a voice, who doesn't. So we looked at those things, the marketing, the configuration on Main Street, how the booths would be aligned. Was there anything that came out in that 5-year plan that could be utilized in discussing what can be done on Main Street? So we as staff have met with police, fire, engineering to determine what exactly the rules were and to address some of the concerns of some Main Street businesses, some vendors, having to do with booth alignment and that sort of thing. So those were the three things, and we'll be coming back to you in committee with some ideas. Of course, the commission is one thing that, and I'll be happy to discuss at length the difference between a city-owned property, the 1912, versus public right-of-way that we as a government only hold in trust for the public. Two totally separate, in my mind, two totally separate things, and we can talk about that. But still, the interim nature of it allows the market, again, to continue its success now while taking some of the good work that was done and the good ideas and giving them a chance to be fleshed out a little bit. Rather than have a big rush before the market's open, let's get it open, let's take the good things, and then move ahead from there.
Thank you, Gary.
Thank you, ma'am.